This was a murder that took place in a park, committed by several junior high school students. Late at night, a woman had simply told the teenagers to go home early, only to be beaten to death on the spot with a baseball bat. The next afternoon, people discovered her body in the park's bushes. The victim was a 53-year-old unemployed woman who lived alone. Her rental apartment was piled high with garbage, reeking of rot, and the walls were covered with the words, "Born human." I'm sorry. Matsuko was born into a middle-class family. Although she was the eldest daughter, she was treated like an invisible presence at home. Because her younger sister was born weak and often ill, their father showered all his love on the younger girl. Whenever he brought gifts home, he bought them only for her. Matsuko never received a single gift from him. Throughout her childhood, her father's attitude toward her was one of constant neglect. That is, until one day when she and her father went to the circus and she made a clown-like face at him. For the first time, he smiled at her. In order to win his attention, Matsuko made that face every day afterward, and each time her father would laugh. But as time passed, his laughter became more and more perfunctory. On the day of Matsuko's coming-of-age ceremony, her father, who was taking photos, suddenly put the camera down. He said to her, "I may never get to see your sister in a kimono." Trying to cheer him up, Matsuko instinctively made that same face again. But this time, her father's expression turned dark, and he scolded her. From childhood to adulthood, Matsuko had always tried to please her father. She obediently went to the university he wanted her to attend and chose the career he wanted for her. At 23, after graduating, she became a music teacher at a local junior high school. Young and beautiful, she was very popular with students. That year was the happiest of her life. A male teacher at the school was pursuing her. He was handsome, and after dates, Matsuko would share funny stories with her sister. But when their father found out, he severely scolded her for not considering her sister's feelings.
なぜ急に男とデートする話なんかした。あの子はあの通りの体だ。ろくに外出することもできない。もちろん恋をすることだって。お前は久美の気持ちを考えたことあるのか。あの子はかわいそうだとは思わないのか。
This was the first time Matsuko's emotions exploded. During a school trip, one of her students, Mike, stole $12,000 in cash from the innkeeper. As homeroom teacher, Matsuko tried to get to the bottom of what happened, but Mike Serjong refused to admit he had taken the money. To resolve the matter quickly, Matsuko decided to cover the loss herself. She secretly met with the innkeeper, claimed she had stolen the money, and begged for forgiveness. But the principal eventually found out, and she faced the prospect of being fired. She then privately asked Mike to admit to the theft. First, Mike agreed, but when they stood before the principal, he changed his story and said Matsuko had threatened him to take the blame. As a result, Matsuko was dismissed from her job. Feeling she had lost all face to face her father, she decided to run away from home. Her sister tried to stop her, but Matsuko angrily shoved her to the ground. She believed her sister was the root cause of all her misfortunes. Their mother arrived just in time, but Matsuko left the home where she had lived for 24 years. 6 months after running away from home, Matsuko, who had no job, asked her younger brother to meet up. He told her that not long after she left, their younger sister had a mental breakdown. And just a while back, their dad had died of a brain hemorrhage. Then he tossed her some money, his face cold and indifferent, and cut off their sibling relationship for good. The news of her father's death left Matsuko frozen in place. The fatherly love she'd spent so long chasing had become a dream she'd never reach. After meeting her brother, Matsuko went back to her rental apartment. Her boyfriend, Alan, did what he always did. He started hitting and kicking her. Insults and beatings had become almost routine for Matsuko. Whenever Alan got stuck with his writing, he'd take his frustration out on her. But Matsuko never thought about breaking up. She figured Alan loved her, at least. That night, though, Alan left a note and disappeared without a word. The note read, "Asterisk, I'm sorry for being born." Asterisk Matsuko rushed out to find him, and eventually spotted him near the local train tracks. Alan had laid down on the tracks and killed himself, a smile on his face. In that moment, Matsuko fell into utter despair. 6 months later, Matsuko became the kept woman of Bill, Alan's rival. Bill was also a writer, gentle, and kind to her. Matsuko thought she'd found someone else who loved her. One night, she followed Bill to his house. When she saw his wife was far less attractive than herself, she was convinced Bill must love her more than his wife. But when Bill found out about her visit, he flew into a rage, scolding her for going to his home without permission. Asterisk, "I never loved you." Asterisk, he told her. Asterisk, "I was only with you because I was jealous of Alan." Asterisk, he stuffed some money into her hand, turned and walked away, leaving Matsuko frozen where she stood. At 25, pressed by financial stress, Matsuko became a hostess at a cabaret. With her good looks, she quickly became the most popular girl there. She even snuck back home once. There was a photo of her father on the family altar in the living room. When she flipped through his diary, she was shocked to find he'd cared about her all along. After she ran away, he'd written the same line in his diary every day. Asterisk, "No news from Matsuko today." Asterisk, tears filled Matsuko's eyes as she read. After all these years, she'd finally felt her father's love. Just then, her younger sister found her, but Matsuko didn't want to stay.
姉ちゃんが帰ってきた。
She handed her sister a large sum of money and left the house that felt both familiar and alien, once again. At 26, Matsuko got her third boyfriend. She invested her money to open a cabaret with him as partners. But he was a man of poor character. He cheated on her and refused to split the profits with her. He wanted to break up, but wouldn't return the money she'd invested. Their argument escalated into a violent fight, and in a fit of rage, Matsuko grabbed a knife and killed him. With a murder on her hands, Matsuko wanted to take her own life. She took a bus to the place where the writer Osamu Dazai had killed himself. She thought if she died there, her soul would be reunited with Alan's. But when she arrived, she found the once mighty river had shrunk to a small ditch. Confused and lost, she met a local barber. He was plain-looking but honest, and the two soon moved in together as a couple. Matsuko stayed on to help out at the barbershop. One night not long after, the barber proposed to her. Matsuko thought this was the start of a happy life. But the day after the proposal, 2 police officers showed up at their door. Matsuko cleaned up the dishes, then followed the officers out. That morning, her fiancé slept soundly, a smile on his face. For the murder, Matsuko was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Over those 8 years, the barber never once visited her. But Matsuko clung to the belief that he was waiting for her. She behaved well in prison, looking forward to reuniting with him after her release. She even worked hard to learn barbering behind bars and got her cosmetology license. Her positive attitude caught the attention of a fellow inmate, Anna, who became her only friend in prison. 8 years later, 34-year-old Matsuko was released. She rushed straight to the barbershop, but stopped short at the door. The barber had long since married and had a child. Watching the warm little family of 3 inside, Matsuko thought, that wife should have been me. Later, Matsuko got a job as a hairstylist at a beauty salon in Tokyo. There, she ran into her prison friend Anna. They became inseparable best friends, often going shopping together. This was the second happiest time in Matsuko's life. Not long after, on her way home from work one night, Matsuko ran into Mike, a student she'd had years ago. She asked him to drive her home, and on the way, told him everything she'd been through over the years. When they talked about the time the innkeeper's money was stolen, Mike finally confessed. He'd been the one who stole it. Back then, he'd had a crush on Matsuko, so he'd framed her to get her attention. Even after more than a decade, Mike still liked her as much as he had back then. The unexpected confession left Matsuko flustered. She could only escape by getting out of the car and going inside. 2 hours later, she found Mike still waiting downstairs for her answer. Finally, Matsuko ran out into the heavy rain toward him. She invited Mike to stay the night, but the next day, Mike showed his true colors. When Matsuko told him not to go out with the knife he carried, he punched her straight in the face. But Matsuko chose to endure it, a smile on her face. She thought, even being hit is better than being all alone. Later, Anna went to Matsuko's place and saw her face covered in bruises from Mike's beatings. She begged Matsuko to break up with him, but Matsuko refused to listen. In the end, Anna gave up on trying to help her and cut off all contact. After moving in with Mike, Matsuko quit her job at the beauty salon. Under Mike's influence, she was drawn into the Yakuza world. She helped him commit countless crimes, and even broke her leg while running from a hit. Eventually, Mike was sentenced to 5 years in prison for murder. Matsuko rented an apartment near the prison, still deeply in love with him, waiting day after day for his release. In prison, Mike began to realize how badly he'd treated Matsuko, and how he'd lured her into a life of crime. He'd ruined her twice already. His existence only brought her harm. So he decided he'd leave her once he got out, figuring that way, Matsuko could have a better life. 5 years later, 40-year-old Matsuko went to the prison gates with a bouquet of flowers to meet him. But Mike picked up a snowball and threw it hard at her. Even hit by the snowball, Matsuko didn't care. She walked toward him, a fawning smile on her face. Matsuko had lost count of how many times she'd been abandoned. She could only shout into the air, over and over, *why? After Mike left, Matsuko suddenly lost her sense of direction in life. She went back to her hometown, but her younger brother still refused to welcome her. His face cold, he said, *I don't have a sister like you. *To get her to leave quickly, he drove her to the train station himself. He told her their younger sister had died of pneumonia the previous autumn. The last thing she'd said was, *sister, you're back. Tears poured down Matsuko's face, mixing with guilt over her sister and regret over her own life. When he dropped her off at the station, her brother said, *go now. Don't ever come back. Matsuko walked slowly into the station, her legs still limp. In that moment, she knew there was no place for her in her hometown. She'd always been the one no one wanted. Later, Matsuko moved to a new town alone, renting a small room by a river. She became a recluse, cutting off contact with everyone. She shut herself up in her tiny room all day, stopped caring about her appearance, and stopped cleaning. All she did was eat, watch TV, and sleep until one day she saw a teen idol group on TV. Suddenly, she had a new anchor in life. She became obsessed with the group, buying their albums and merchandise like crazy. She went to every one of their concerts. She even wrote long fan letters to the idols, pouring out every detail of her life. She sent a thick stack of letters, then waited eagerly for a reply. But days turned into years, and she never heard back. This routine went on for 13 years. By 53, Matsuko was suffering from severe mental illness. She covered the walls of her room with the words, "I'm sorry for being born," and when she ran into strangers, she'd scream and run away. One day, Matsuko went to the hospital to pick up her medication, and ran into her old friend Anna. She panicked and fled, but Anna chased after her, concern in her voice. Anna now owned her own company. She told Matsuko she could come work for her anytime. She stuffed her business card into Matsuko's hand, but Matsuko still turned and walked away without looking back. By the river near her rental apartment, she crumpled the card and threw it into the grass. She couldn't bring herself to trust anyone anymore. Late that night, Matsuko lay in bed, unable to sleep. She thought of her younger sister, and in a hallucination, she saw her sister with long, messy hair. Instinctively, she picked up a pair of scissors and began to cut her sister's hair, her movements smooth and practiced. Even though she hadn't touched a pair of scissors in over a decade, she was still a skilled hairstylist. In that moment, Matsuko felt a flicker of hope for a new life. She hurried out of the apartment to find the crumpled business card. It was a glimmer of light in her dark life. She found it by the river, just as she'd hoped. Nearby, a group of middle schoolers were playing baseball. Old habits kicked in. She'd been a teacher once. "It's getting late," she called out to them. "You should go home soon." But the boys didn't listen. Instead, they picked up their baseball bats and beat Matsuko to death. Just as she'd finally felt hope for her life, she lost it forever. Matsuko's soul turned into a butterfly. She saw herself living alone, closed off and lost. She saw herself returning to her hometown, all alone. She saw her younger self, wronged and hurt after being scolded by her father. She saw the little girl she'd been, passionately in love with music. Her memories finally drifted back to her childhood home. Inside, she saw her father, her mother, her younger brother. And in the end, her memory stopped at the stairs. At the top, stood her younger sister, waiting for her to come home, just like she'd always done.
おかえり。ただいま。